After autumn arrived, the wind behind the university district became cold every morning. I got out of bed at 5 and pushed my Jianbing cart from my rented room in the southern part of the city to the university district in the north. The walk took 40 minutes. Jianbing was a hot, savory Chinese breakfast crepe made with grain batter, egg, sauce, herbs, and a crispy fried cracker. The bearing on the left wheel of my cart was broken. It creaked with every turn, sounding as though the entire cart might fall apart at any moment, but I could not bring myself to repair it. The repair would cost 80 yuan. That was enough to buy flour for 3 days. I reached my usual place at 5:30 first. I raised the rain canopy, then I connected the gas cylinder, set out the bucket of batter, arranged the eggs in neat rows, and placed finely chopped scallions and cilantro inside sealed containers. By the time everything was ready, the sky had only just begun to brighten. The first students with early classes would soon arrive. There were 7 or 8 food stalls along this street. Old Zhao sold grilled cold noodles, Sister Liu made egg-stuffed flatbread, Old Sun sold soy milk and fried dough sticks. They had all worked here for more than 3 years. I was the newcomer who had forced her way onto the street that spring. My position was at the worst corner near the end of the road, close to the rubbish bins. Only half as many people passed my stall as the stalls near the entrance, but I was not afraid. Jianbing depended on skill and returning customers. Location was not everything. My regular customers all agreed that my stall was clean. I mixed the batter with freshly ground grains. Mung bean flour, millet flour, and wheat flour were combined in exact proportions. I prepared the mixture the night before and allowed it to rest. By morning, it was smooth and delicate. I fried the crispy crackers myself every day. They were golden and brittle. One bite sent crumbs falling everywhere. I also cooked the sauce myself. The sweet bean paste contained sesame seeds and crushed peanuts. It was salty, slightly sweet, and fragrant enough to travel halfway down the street. When I brushed it onto the hot crepe at 6:30, the students began arriving. The bamboo spreader in my hand never stopped moving. Pour the batter, spread it into a circle, crack an egg, add scallions, flip the crepe, brush on the sauce, add the crispy cracker, fold it, place it in a paper bag. The movements flowed together. I could finish one order in a minute. Regular customers understood how I worked. They put their payment into the box, took their food, and left. There was no need for unnecessary conversation. By 8:30, the students had entered their classrooms, and the street became quiet. I brushed the crumbs from my apron and prepared to close the stall. There was enough batter left for 2 jianbing. I planned to make one for breakfast and save the other for lunch. As I bent down to disconnect the gas cylinder, a pair of white canvas shoes stopped in front of my stall. They were perfectly clean. The laces had been tied neatly. Not even a spot of dust marked the toes on a street covered in oil and dirt. Shoes that clean were a sight by themselves. I straightened and looked at their owner. She was a young woman around my age, probably in her early 20s. She wore a thin cream-colored trench coat over a light blue shirt. Her long black hair was straight and soft, untouched by dye or curls. Her features were delicate, and her skin was as pale as porcelain. Standing in front of my stained cart, she looked like a white swan that had accidentally landed at a construction site. There was something unusual about her presence. She stood quietly with her back perfectly straight, the corners of her mouth lifted slightly. Her gaze was gentle but confident. Every movement contained an ease that seemed to come from her bones. It was not the artificial elegance that money could purchase. It belonged to someone who had seen the world since childhood and had never been forced to doubt her place in it. "Are you still selling?" she asked. Her voice was soft, like a spring breeze. "Yes." I placed down the gas cylinder and tied my apron again. "What would you like?" "The basic one is 6 yuan. With an egg, it is 7. With sausage, it is 8. The basic one is fine." While she spoke, she continued watching my hands. It was not the kind of look people use to judge someone. She seemed genuinely interested, as though she were observing something fascinating. She watched me scoop the batter. She watched me spread it. She watched me crack the egg. Her attention made me slightly uncomfortable. "Do you want scallions and cilantro?" "Both. Please add extra scallions. Spicy, only a little." I brushed on the sauce, added the scallions and cilantro, folded the jianbing, and placed it inside a paper bag. 6 yuan. She removed a pale pink wallet from her coat pocket and handed me a 10 yuan note. I gave her 4 yuan in change. When she accepted it, she thanked me in the same soft voice. Then she did not leave. She remained in front of the stall, lowered her head, and took a bite. After chewing twice, her eyes suddenly brightened. She looked like a cat that had discovered dried fish. She was clearly delighted but still trying to maintain her graceful expression. "It is delicious." There was more warmth in her voice now. "Thank you." I smiled and continued packing my things. She stood beside the cart and slowly finished the entire jianbing. Her movements were elegant, Although she ate more quickly than I expected, when she finished, she removed a packet of wet tissues from her handbag and carefully wiped her fingers. Then she placed the used tissue inside the rubbish bin beside my stall. "Will you be here tomorrow?" she asked. "Yes. I come every day unless it rains." She nodded and walked away. Her cream-colored coat moved gently in the autumn wind. When she reached the end of the street, a black sedan pulled over. A driver stepped out and opened the rear door for her. The emblem on the car was circular, with a large letter inside. I was too far away to identify it, but the paint reflected the sunlight so brightly that it hurt my eyes. I looked away and continued wiping the metal cooking surface. It was not especially strange for the daughter of a wealthy family to eat at a street stall. The university district was nearby. Perhaps she was a rich student who had become bored with cafeteria food and wanted to try something different. She probably enjoyed the novelty and asked whether I would return tomorrow, only to be polite. I did not think much about it, but the next day, she came again. She arrived at the same time, 8:30. I was preparing to close the stall. She wore the same cream-colored coat and the same white canvas shoes. She stood quietly and waited for me to make her order, the basic one, extra scallions and a little spice. She gave her order before I could ask. I remember, I looked at her while scooping the batter. "Are you a student at one of the nearby universities?" "No." She shook her head when I handed her the genbing. She added, "I have already graduated. I help at my family's company." "That sounds good." I did not ask further questions. I handed her the change this time. She remained beside the stall while she ate as usual. She wiped her fingers afterward and threw the tissue away. Then she looked at me. "Thank you. It was very good." "You are welcome. See you tomorrow." Once again, she entered the black sedan and left. This time, I began to wonder. Coming twice meant she genuinely liked the food, but her clothing and the expensive car were completely out of place on this street. Would someone like her truly travel this far every morning for a 6 yuan genbing? Were wealthy people really that bored? She returned on the third day, then the fourth, then the fifth. For an entire week, she came every morning, 8:30 exactly. The basic genbing, extra scallions, a little spice, 6 yuan. She stood beside the stall until she finished eating. Then she wiped her hands, said, "See you tomorrow," and left in the black sedan. I began to feel that something was not right. "That girl is here again." Old Zhao leaned toward me from the neighboring stall and lowered his voice. "How many days has it been?" 8. "She comes here every day to buy your genbing. Do you think she wants something from you?" "She thinks it tastes good." I did not look up from scraping dried batter off my cooking plate. "It tastes good." Old Zhao made a doubtful sound. "There are plenty of food stalls here. Are my grilled cold noodles not good? Is old son's soy milk not good?" He leaned closer. "She comes only to your stall, and she always waits until you are about to close. There has to be a reason." "Uncle Zhao, stop talking before you frighten away my customer. I am worried about you." He put out his cigarette and lowered his voice even further. "That girl is not ordinary. Do you know how much her car costs?" I shook my head. "It is a Maybach, several million yuan." He looked toward the street. "Someone that wealthy comes to your broken cart every morning. Perhaps she is interested in you." My hand paused, then I continued cleaning the metal plate. Old Zhao's words were crude, but the situation truly was strange. I was a poor woman who sold genbing. I lived in a divided room in the southern part of the city. Every cent I owned amounted to less than 10,000 yuan. There was no possible connection between me and an heiress who traveled in a Maybach. Why did she come every day? Still, she always paid properly. She ate and left without requesting anything. She had never caused trouble. Even if I suspected something, I had no reason to refuse her business. On the 9th day, she did not immediately order. She stood in front of the stall and studied me for a long time. "May I ask you something?" "Go ahead." I placed down the bamboo spreader and looked at her. "Who taught you to make genbing?" The question surprised me. I paused before answering. "My mother." "Your mother?" Something lit inside her eyes. "Where is she now?" "She passed away." My voice remained calm. 2 years ago, stomach cancer." Her expression froze. The light inside her eyes disappeared immediately. She remained silent for several seconds. "I am sorry," she said quietly. "I should not have asked." "It is all right. It happened a long time ago." I picked up the spreader again. "The usual order?" "Yes." She remained silent while eating that morning. When she finished, she did not immediately leave. She stood beside the stall and hesitated before speaking. "My name is Jiyu Qingwan." It was the first time I learned her name, Jiyu Qingwan. It suited her, clear, quiet, and gentle. "Mine is Fang Tang." "Fang Tang." She repeated it. A faint smile appeared on her lips. "That is a beautiful name too." Then she entered the car. The wheels crossed the uneven concrete road and disappeared around the corner. She continued coming every day during the following week. We gradually began talking more. She asked Whether I had been busy and what time I woke each morning. She asked whether I was tired, I asked whether her company was busy, whether she had eaten breakfast, and whether the jianbing tasted right. Slowly, a strange routine formed between us. She came regardless of the weather, I waited regardless of the weather. I spent 3 minutes making her jianbing, then we spent another 5 minutes speaking. The other vendors grew accustomed to the sight. Fang Tang's distinguished customer is here, that was what they began calling her. Old Zhao stopped making suspicious remarks, but whenever the Maybach appeared at the end of the street, he gave me a meaningful look. Around the 25th day, Jiyu Qingwan arrived with someone else. It was a young man. He was tall, with long legs, broad shoulders, and a narrow waist. He wore a black casual jacket over a dark grey sweater. His features were strong and sharply defined, his brow was high, and the line of his jaw was so clean that it appeared carved. He stood behind Jiyu Qingwan and allowed his gaze to move calmly over my food cart. There was little expression on his face. Still, I could feel him studying me without making it obvious. My brother, Jiyu Qingwan said casually. He happened to be driving me. The man gave a slight nod in greeting. His gaze rested on me for 2 or 3 seconds before moving away, but during those brief seconds, I felt as though a scanner had passed over me from head to toe. While I prepared Jiyu Qingwan's jianbing, he stood beside her and watched in silence. He watched me scoop the batter, he watched me crack the egg, he watched me flip the crepe and brush on the sauce. He did not speak until I handed the finished order to his sister. Do you make the sauce yourself? His voice was low and rich, like the middle register of a cello. It was not loud, but it carried clearly. Yes, I looked up at him. What is the base? Fermented soybean paste and sweet bean paste, 2 parts to 1. My answer was concise. I fry the soybean paste until the oil turns red, then add the sweet bean paste. After that, I add crushed sesame seeds and peanuts. Finally, I use a small amount of sesame oil for fragrance. He remained silent for 2 seconds. The corner of his mouth moved slightly. It might have been a smile or perhaps it was nothing. Good, he said. Only one word, then he looked away, as though the question had been casual. Jiyu Qingwan took a bite of her jianbing. Her eyes moved between her brother and me. She was trying unsuccessfully to hide her smile. Brother, I told you Fang Tang was good. There was a childlike pride in her voice, as though she were showing him a new treasure. He removed his phone and checked the time. Have you finished? I have a meeting at 9:30. I know. Jiyu Qingwan finished the remainder in several bites, wiped her hands as usual, and waved toward me. Fang Tang, see you tomorrow. They left together. Her brother drove a dark grey car. I did not recognize the emblem, but the body was sleek and smooth, like a shark resting in dark water. The 2 vehicles left the street one behind the other. Fang Tang, old Zhao shouted from 3 stalls away. Who was that man? He looked like a movie star. Her brother. Their entire family must have excellent genes. Sister Liu joined the conversation without stopping the movement of her cooking spatula. The sister is beautiful, and the brother is handsome. Fang Tang, you have met someone important. Do not waste the opportunity. What opportunity? I laughed. Concentrate on your own food. I lowered my head and continued packing my things, but the truth was that I did not feel as calm as I appeared. Jiyu Qingwan had not brought her brother by accident. The way he looked at me had been brief, but it contained careful judgment. His question about the sauce had not been casual. He had been verifying something. What did they want? More importantly, Jiyu Qingwan said see you tomorrow with increasing certainty. It sounded as though she had decided that I would always remain here, that I would never leave, that I would never disappear. The feeling made me uneasy. I was accustomed to being ignored. I was accustomed to living quietly and without attracting attention. I was like grass beside the road. No one noticed me, and that was safer. Now someone was driving a Maybach to buy breakfast from me every morning. She had even brought her family to examine me. It felt as though a spotlight had suddenly turned toward my head. The light was so bright that I wanted to hide. On the 30th day, Jiyu Qingwan arrived exactly on time this time. She was alone at 8:30. The white canvas shoes appeared in front of my stall. She was not wearing her trench coat. Instead, she wore a loose pale yellow cardigan. It made her appear even softer, like a freshly peeled roasted chestnut. The basic one, extra scallions, and a little spice, I said for her with a smile. Yes, she nodded, but unlike usual, she did not watch me prepare the food. Her head was slightly tilted. She pressed her lips together repeatedly, as though trying to decide how to say something. When I handed her the jianbing, she did not immediately accept it. She raised her head and looked at me with unusual seriousness. Fang Tang, I need to ask you a question. Ask. I moved the jianbing closer. Take this first. It will lose its crispness when it becomes cold. She accepted it with both hands but did not eat. Instead, she looked directly into my eyes. If someone offered you a better job, would you be willing to leave this place? I froze, then I laughed. What kind of job? Would it pay more than selling Jianbing? Definitely. She did not smile, her expression remained serious. That depends on the job. I leaned against the cart and wiped my hands on my apron. I will not do anything illegal. I will not betray my conscience. And if it is too far away, it may not be convenient. I looked at her. What is the job? She was silent for several seconds, organizing her words, then she drew a deep breath and said something that almost caused the cloth in my hand to fall to the ground. My father wants to meet you. I stared at her for 5 seconds to make certain she was not joking. Your father wants to meet me. My voice rose slightly. Why? Do not be nervous. Jiyu Qingwan placed a warm hand over my arm. It is not anything bad, I promise. My father is a good person. He simply wants to meet you. Meet me. My confusion deepened. I sell Jianbing on the street. Why would your father want to meet me? She pressed her lips together. Something uncertain moved inside her eyes. It looked as though she was deciding whether to reveal more. In the end, she only smiled, but there was a quiet certainty hidden in that smile. You will understand after you meet him. She removed her phone from her bag. Fang Tang, what is your phone number? I will send you the address. I gave her my number. Several seconds later, a message arrived. The address was 128, Jinjiang Road in the eastern part of the city, GU Corporation Tower. My fingers tightened around the phone. Everyone in the city knew the GU Corporation. It was an enormous business empire with interests in real estate, finance, and commercial retail. GU Plaza in the city center belonged to them. The group was among the 3 largest taxpayers in the city. Its chairman, Jiyu Changming, was a legendary businessman who had built everything from nothing. His face appeared regularly on the covers of financial magazines. Jiyu Qingwan's surname was Jiyu. Her father wanted to meet me. Between a poor woman selling Jianbing behind a university and the wealthiest family in the city lay more than 100 layers of society. Why would Jiyu Changming want to meet me? Fang Tang, Jiyu Qingwan's voice pulled me from my shock. Are you all right? Not particularly, I answered honestly. Jiyu Qingwan, what does your father want from me? Unless you explain clearly, I am not going. She hesitated. Finally, she offered part of the truth. I do not know exactly what he wants to discuss. He only told me that I had to bring you to meet him. She emphasized her next words. But I promise it is not anything bad. I studied her sincere expression and slowly released a breath. After 1 month, I had formed a basic judgment of Jiyu Qingwan. She was probably hiding many things from me, but she had no malicious intentions. The pleasure on her face whenever she ate my Jianbing was real. The admiration and affection that came from inside her were also real. Fine, I threw the cleaning cloth aside. When? Tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon. Can you come? What about my stall tomorrow afternoon? The question left my mouth instinctively. Jiyu Qingwan froze, then she burst into laughter. She was beautiful when she laughed, her eyes curved, and the quiet smile she normally wore disappeared. She looked like a child who had finally received a piece of candy. Fang Tang, do you know what your greatest quality is? She shook her head while smiling. You never believe that you deserve special treatment, even after learning that my father is Jiyu Changming. Your first thought is still your Jianbing stall. Her laughter softened. That dignity deserves respect. Her words made me uncomfortable. I lowered my head and pretended to rearrange the sauce containers. The stall is my only source of income. I have to think about how I will eat. Then let us do this. Jiyu Qingwan became serious again. If meeting my father causes you to lose half a day of business, I will compensate you for the income. No, I immediately waved my hands. I was only speaking without thinking. Tomorrow afternoon. Right, I will come. Then it is decided. She finally took her first bite after chewing twice. She narrowed her eyes with satisfaction. It is so good. Then she looked at me. Fang Tang, do you know why I buy your Jianbing every day? Because it tastes good. Not only that, she shook her head. The first time I ate it, the taste felt familiar. It was like something I had eaten a very long time ago. As she spoke, a distant light appeared in her eyes. It looked as though she were remembering something from another lifetime. I remained silent because I did not know how to answer. Jiyu Qingwan finished eating and wiped her hands before leaving. She lowered the car window and waved. See you tomorrow, Fang Tang, 2 o'clock. Do not be late, I know. The black Maybach slowly left the street and disappeared beneath the grey autumn sky. I stood beside my cart, holding the cloth I had used to wipe the stove. My emotions felt like a container of seasonings that had been overturned. Old Zhao appeared beside me at some point. An unlit cigarette hung from his mouth. He narrowed his eyes and looked toward the end of the street. Fang Tang, what did that girl say to you? Nothing. I turned and continued packing. Nothing. He removed the cigarette and looked at me as though I had insulted his intelligence. My eyes work perfectly. She showed you something, and then you stood there like a fool. What happened? I tightened the valve on the gas cylinder. After a short silence, I said, her father wants to meet me. Her father? Old Zhao froze, then he slapped his thigh. I knew it. They have chosen you as a daughter-in-law. Her father wants to inspect you. Uncle Zhao, stop inventing things. I did not know whether to laugh or become angry. She is the daughter of the GU Corporation. I sell Jianbing. What daughter-in-law could they possibly be inspecting? The GU Corporation. Old Zhao's mouth opened wide enough to hold an egg. You mean that GU Corporation? Yes, that one. Old Zhao became silent. He stared for a long time, then he placed the unlit cigarette back between his lips and muttered, Fang Tang, there is a benefactor in your fate. A benefactor? I did not know. What I did know was that at 2 the following afternoon, I would enter the most expensive building in the city and meet a powerful man I had never seen before, and all of it had begun 1 month earlier. A young woman in white canvas shoes stopped in front of my stall and asked one simple question. Are you still selling? The autumn wind crossed the street and lifted several yellow plane tree leaves. I folded the rain canopy and began pushing the creaking food cart toward the southern part of the city. One question repeated endlessly inside my mind. Why did Jiyu Changming want to meet me at noon the next day? I closed my stall. It was 3 hours earlier than usual when old Zhao saw me taking down the rain canopy in the middle of the day. His eyes nearly fell into his cooking pan. Fang Tang, what are you doing? You are closing at noon. You do not want to earn money today. I have something to do this afternoon. I lifted the gas cylinder onto the cart and secured it with rope. Are you going to meet that girl's father? Old Zhao moved closer and lowered his voice. He looked around as though we were secret agents exchanging classified information. Listen to me. Do not be afraid when you get there. Say whatever needs to be said. There is nothing shameful about selling Jianbing. We earn our living through our own skills. We are not beneath anyone. His serious expression made me laugh. Uncle Zhao, I am not going there to fight. Why are you so nervous? I am not nervous. He removed the cigarette from his mouth and looked at me with unusual seriousness. I am afraid they will look down on you. Rich people do not see people the same way we do. Keep your back straight when you get there. Do you understand? My hands paused. Old Zhao normally joked about everything and rarely spoke seriously, but whenever something important happened, he was always the first person to worry about me. His wife had died early. His son worked in the south and returned only once a year. Perhaps he had begun to think of me as half a daughter. I understand. I patted his arm. Do not worry, Uncle Zhao. There is no situation Fang Tang cannot handle. You have handled nothing. He laughed and cursed affectionately, then he helped me move the final box of eggs onto the cart. Go, do not be late. Tomorrow, you must tell me everything that happened. I pushed the cart back to my rented room, took a shower, and combed my hair carefully. There were very few clothes inside my wardrobe: 2 t-shirts, 1 pair of jeans, a faded plaid shirt, and a cotton dress my mother had sewn for me years ago. It had remained at the bottom of a storage box for a long time. After hesitating, I chose the plaid shirt and jeans. The dress felt too formal. I was not going there to seek favor from anyone. Clean and tidy would be enough. I stood in front of the mirror. I was 24. Years of working outside had left my skin slightly rough from the wind and sun, but my features were still pleasant. I tied my hair into a low ponytail with a plain black elastic band. Then I carried the canvas bag I had used for 4 years and left. GU Corporation Tower was on Jinjiang Road in the eastern part of the city. It was the most expensive district in the entire city. I changed buses 3 times and traveled for nearly an hour and a half. After getting off the bus, I stood beside the road and looked upward. I almost strained my neck. GU Corporation Tower had 68 floors. Its exterior was covered entirely in glass. The dark blue surface reflected the autumn sunlight so brightly that I could barely keep my eyes open, for enormous golden characters spelling GU Corporation stood at the top of the building. Each character was nearly 2 floors tall and could be seen from several streets away. A bronze sculpture stood in the plaza before the building. It was a powerful bull striding forward with its head raised, for words had been carved into the base. Ambition reaches far. I stood before the bronze bull for 2 seconds. Then I drew a deep breath and walked through the revolving doors. The lobby ceiling was more than 10 meters high. The marble floor was polished enough to reflect a person's face. The receptionist wore a dark blue professional suit. Her makeup was as perfect as someone in a magazine. Her gaze passed over me with professional courtesy, but beneath that courtesy, I noticed a faint examination. My canvas shoes, my faded jeans, my washed-out plaid shirt, everything about me looked out of place in the luxurious lobby. Hello, how may I help you? At least her voice was pleasant. My name is Fang Tang. Chairman GU asked to meet me at 2. My tongue nearly twisted when I said the words Chairman GU. The receptionist typed twice on her keyboard. Her gaze moved to the screen, then her eyes visibly widened when she looked at me again. The examination had disappeared. It was replaced by curiosity she could barely conceal. Welcome, Miss Fang. Chairman GU has already given us instructions. Please follow me. She left the reception desk and guided me across the lobby toward a row of private elevators. One elevator was different from the others. Its frame was gold, and 4 words above it read, VIP access only. The receptionist swiped a card. The doors opened silently. The walls inside were covered in pale oak panels instead of metal. A soft grey carpet covered the floor. Chairman GU is waiting on the 68th floor. This elevator will take you there directly. Thank you. The doors closed. I stood alone inside the elevator. It was so quiet that I could hear my own heartbeat. The floor numbers rose one after another. The entire top floor of the GU Corporation Tower belonged to GU Changming's private office and reception area. People said the view from there covered the entire city skyline and looked almost unreal. During my 24 years of life, I had lived in the worst divided rooms. I had slept on concrete floors so cold that my bones hurt. I had eaten 3 yuan packets of instant noodles for dinner. Now I stood inside a shining private elevator, rising toward the highest point in the city. I felt like an ant trapped inside a balloon. The higher I floated, the more uncertain I became. The elevator chimed, the doors opened, a faint sandalwood fragrance reached me. A wide corridor lay ahead. Dark grey wool carpet covered the floor and felt like clouds beneath my feet. Several traditional landscape paintings hung on the walls inside rosewood frames. They were clearly not printed copies. A middle-aged man stood at the end of the corridor. He wore a dark blue suit, his hair was perfectly arranged, and a gentle smile rested on his face. He appeared to be in his 50s and remained in excellent shape. His back was straight. His features resembled GU Qingwan's slightly, especially his eyes. They were clear but contained deep insight. But the young man standing behind him caused my heart to stop for one beat. Black suit, white shirt, no tie. His features were strong and sharply defined. His high brow and angular jaw looked carved by a blade. Both hands rested in his trouser pockets as he leaned casually against the wall. His calm gaze settled on me. He was GU Qingwan's brother, the man I had met once at the Jianbing stall. That meant he was GU Changming's son, the heir to the GU Corporation. Miss Fang, welcome. GU Changming walked toward me with a broad smile. His steps were so quick that he did not resemble a man approaching 60. Was the traffic bad? You must have had a difficult journey. Please come in. His warmth surprised me. A billionaire businessman was speaking politely to a street vendor and repeatedly expressing concern over my journey. I did not know how to respond. I could only bend slightly and say, "Hello, Chairman GU." It was not difficult. Do not call me Chairman GU, Uncle GU is fine. GU Changming personally guided me toward the reception room as we walked. He looked at me from the side. "Qingwan has spoken about you for an entire month. She kept telling me there was a young woman behind the university who made excellent jianbing. I have finally met you." His voice was friendly, and his gaze was warm. Still, I noticed that he looked at my face longer than I had expected. It was more than simple examination. It seemed as though he was trying to recognize someone. The reception room door opened. The room was at least 10 times larger than my rented home. Floor-to-ceiling windows covered an entire wall and faced the city skyline. Pale grey sofas formed a semicircle. A 3-level dessert stand and a pot of tea sat on the coffee table. Sunlight poured through the windows and painted a golden rectangle across the grey carpet. "Sit wherever you like." GU Changming took the main chair and indicated the longer sofa beside it. I sat down without meaning to. I held my back very straight. GU Qingwan's brother did not sit. He walked to the window and stood sideways to me, looking outside, but I could feel that part of his attention remained on me. "This is my son, GU Yangju." GU Changming gestured toward the man by the window. "Qingwan brought him to your stall last time. When he returned, he praised your sauce." "Hello, Mr. GU." I nodded toward him. GU Yangju turned and gave a slight nod. His expression remained unchanged, but he said, "Sit comfortably. Do not be nervous." His voice was still low, like a cello string touched gently. "Qingwan is away on a business trip." GU Changming poured tea for me. The liquid was pale gold, and the fragrance was delicate. "She could not return today, so she called and repeatedly instructed me to treat you well." He laughed. "This meeting was arranged by Qingwan. I am only following her instructions." I accepted the teacup with both hands, but my mind moved quickly. GU Qingwan was not present, yet her father still wanted to meet me. That meant Jiyu Changming was the person who truly wanted this meeting. Jiyu Qingwan's daily visits during the past month had probably been preparing the way for him. But why had Jiyu Changming needed her to prepare anything? Miss Fang, how old are you? 24. What is your Chinese zodiac sign? The rabbit. The rabbit is good, gentle and careful. Jiyu Changming smiled and nodded. Qingwan said you sell jianbing behind the university. How is business? It is enough to support me. You work alone? Yes, that cannot be easy. He lifted his tea and took a sip. A young woman working by herself, waking early and returning late. Does your family not worry about you? The question sounded ordinary, but I noticed a brief sharpness in his eyes. He was investigating my background. Powerful people never asked meaningless questions. There is almost no one left in my family. I answered honestly. My mother died 2 years ago. My other relatives do not live in this city. Jiyu Changming placed down his cup. Something moved in his eyes, but he quickly controlled it. After 2 seconds of silence, he sighed. Your mother must have had a difficult life. She raised you alone and passed this skill to you. The words felt slightly strange. I had never told him what my mother had done. How did he know she had taught me? Then I remembered that I had told Jiyu Qingwan I learned from my mother. It was natural for him to know. You were a blessing to your mother, Jiyu Changming said softly. She was fortunate to have such a good daughter. He did not look at me when he spoke. He looked through the windows, but that simple sentence made something vibrate inside my chest. There was too much warmth in his voice. He did not sound like an elder offering polite praise to a stranger. He sounded like someone who had known my mother for a long time. Beside the window, Jiyu Yangju turned slightly. His gaze left the city and moved toward his father. The two men exchanged a brief glance. It was so fast that I almost missed it. I could not understand everything inside that look, but it confirmed one thing. The Jiyu father and son knew something I did not. Miss Fang, may I ask you a personal question? Jiyu Changming looked at me again. His tone returned to its earlier lightness. Have you ever considered changing careers? I paused. Jiyu Qingwan had asked almost the same question the previous day. Uncle Jiyu, what do you mean? Qingwan told me you prepare everything yourself. He poured more tea into my cup. You mix the batter, fry the crackers, and cook the sauce. You put so much effort into a 6 yuan jianbing and earn almost no profit, but you never reduce the quality. His voice remained slow and steady. Someone like that should not spend every day standing in the wind and sun behind a university. She deserves a better platform where more people can experience her skill. His words touched a soft place inside me. Only I understood how difficult the stall could be during winter. I woke at 5 in the morning with fingers too cold to hold the bamboo spreader. During summer, I stood beside the gas stove until my clothes were soaked with sweat. When it rained, I could not work and had to survive on my savings. City inspectors had chased me away. Other vendors had tried to force me out. Drunken students had cursed at me. I had earned every cent while gritting my teeth, but I had never complained. I did not have the right to complain. I needed to survive. Uncle Jiyu, I have considered changing my life. I lowered my head and looked at my reflection in the tea, but I do not have much education or any useful connections. Other than making jianbing, I do not know what I can do. You do not need an impressive education or connections. Jiyu Changming's voice became serious. You have skill, conscience, and dignity. Those things are more valuable than any diploma. He paused, then he said something that left my entire body rigid. What if I invited you to join the Jiyu Corporation? I raised my head sharply. His expression was serious. There was no trace of a joke. The eyes he shared with Jiyu Qingwan held complete certainty. What would I do at the Jiyu Corporation? My voice was calmer than I expected. You could begin in our food and restaurant division. We own 6 high-end restaurants and 2 food halls. We need a product development consultant who understands traditional street food. A slight smile appeared on his lips. You do not need to worry about the salary. It would certainly be much higher than what you earn selling jianbing. The offer was too sudden. A street vendor becoming a product development consultant for the Jiyu Corporation. I did not even fully understand what a product development consultant did. It felt as though I had spent my entire life catching fish in the small river beside my home, only for someone to tell me I could command a ship across the Pacific Ocean. It made no sense. No matter how good my jianbing tasted, it could not be enough for Jiyu Changming to personally recruit me. The Jiyu Corporation employed countless Michelin-level chefs. Why would they need a street vendor as a consultant? Uncle Jiyu, I want to ask you something. I lifted my head and faced his gaze. Ask anything. Why are you so interested in me? My tone remained steady, but every word carried weight. I do not believe my jianbing is impressive enough to attract the attention of the entire Jiyu Corporation. What is the real reason you want me to join the company? The reception room became silent for several seconds. Jiyu Changming's fingers moved slowly along the rim of his teacup. His eyes were as complicated as deep water. He did not answer immediately. He drank some tea and placed the cup down slowly. Qingwan told me you reached this point entirely through your own effort. He spoke in a low, clear voice. She said there is something inside you that refuses to bow to anyone. She also said that if anyone in this world deserves someone to offer a hand, it is you. Why? I continued pressing him. Jiyu Qingwan has only known me for a month. Why does she want to help me? Because, Dad, Jiyu Yangju suddenly interrupted from beside the window. He turned toward his father with a calm expression. It is almost time. You have another meeting at 3. His timing was perfect. He stopped his father exactly before the answer escaped. Jiyu Changming paused, then he stood, and the smile returned to his face. Miss Fang, we will stop here today. Consider my offer after you return home. There is no need to answer immediately. The doors of the GU Corporation will always be open to you. I stood and shook his hand. His palm was broad and strong. There was a steady power in his grip. Before I left, he removed a paper bag from beneath the coffee table and handed it to me. Qingwan asked me to prepare this. She said you once mentioned having a weak stomach. There are several herbal teas inside that may help. They are not especially valuable. Take them home and try them. I accepted the bag and looked inside. There were several beautifully packaged boxes of herbal tea. There was also a small dark blue box without any logo. When I opened it, a white jade safety pendant lay inside. The jade was smooth and warm in color. It reflected a soft light. A small character had been engraved on the back. Tang, this is too valuable. I cannot accept it. I immediately tried to return the box. Keep it. Jiyu Changming did not accept it. His eyes suddenly became gentle, and his voice softened. This is fate. Fate cannot be measured with money. I wanted to refuse again, but Jiyu Yangju had already walked to the door and opened it. He stood there looking at me. His eyes still held a faint examination, but the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. The curve was almost impossible to see. The Jianbing is excellent, he said. My sister was right. When I left GU Corporation Tower, the cool autumn wind reached me. It carried the fragrance of osmanthus flowers. I stood beside the bronze bull in the plaza, holding the paper bag. I felt as though I had just awakened from a dream. The jade pendant inside the bag felt heavy. It was like a question pressing against my hand. Jiyu Changming's final words repeated inside my mind. This is fate. What fate? Why would a billionaire give a jade pendant engraved with my name to a street vendor he had never met and call it fate? That explanation would not satisfy a 3-year-old child. If he did not want to tell me the truth, why had he insisted on meeting me? Why had he stopped speaking at the most important moment? Why had Jiyu Yangju interrupted him exactly when he was about to answer? What game was this family playing? Carrying those questions, I walked to the bus stop and boarded an old bus back to the southern part of the city. The view outside changed from wealthy to poor. Skyscrapers became low houses and crowded urban villages. It was dark when I reached my rented room. The 10-square-meter space smelled damp and slightly moldy. Old newspapers covered the walls. A narrow single bed stood beside the window. The remaining space held only a small table and one chair. The kitchen and bathroom were shared with the other tenants and located at the end of the corridor. The water heater often stopped working. It had failed again that day. I placed the paper bag on the table and examined the jade pendant repeatedly. A circular safety pendant represented peace and a smooth life. The character Tang had been carefully carved by hand. Each stroke was smooth. Someone had worked one line at a time. Who would have a piece of jade carved especially for me? I suddenly remembered that my mother had once owned a jade pendant. My father gave it to her when they married. Later, when we had no money left, she pawned it at a shop in the southern part of the city. She received 2,000 yuan and used the money to pay my school fees. She never mentioned the pendant afterward, but I saw her stare into the empty drawer several times. I could no longer remember exactly what her pendant looked like. I only remembered that it had been round, with something carved on it. I closed my eyes and held the pendant tightly. The jade felt cold like metal at first. Gradually, my body heat warmed it. My neighbors were arguing in the corridor. Someone upstairs was playing loud music. The landlord's dog barked continuously below. The urban village was as noisy as ever. But sitting at my table with the jade in my hand, I suddenly felt that the coming winter might not be as cold. The next morning, I woke at 5 and pushed my cart to the back street as usual. Old Zhao was already working. When he saw me, he stopped moving his spatula. Fang Tang, you are finally here. What happened yesterday? Did you meet the great chairman? I met him. I raised the canopy and connected the gas cylinder with my usual speed. What did you talk about? Old Zhao put his spatula down completely and turned toward me. He clearly refused to continue working until he heard the full story. Sister Liu also raised her ears. Her movements became noticeably slower. Nothing much. I mixed the batter. He invited me to work for the GU Corporation as some kind of product development consultant. Old Zhao froze for 3 seconds, then he slapped his thigh. I told you there was a benefactor in your fate, but you refused to believe me. I did not accept. I moved the box of eggs onto the cooking table. What? Old Zhao's voice rose so high that even old Sun at the end of the street looked toward us. What did you say? The GU Corporation invited you, and you refused, Fang Tang. Is something wrong with your head, Uncle Zhao? Why would they invite me? I stopped and faced him. I only finished high school. Other than making jianbing, I know almost nothing. Why would a corporation that large want me as a consultant? There must be something I do not know. Old Zhao opened his mouth, then he closed it. He had spent his entire life selling food on the street. He understood people better than most. The moment I explained, he understood my concern. You are afraid they want something else from you. I am afraid I do not understand my own position. I turned back to the batter. I know exactly what kind of meal my skills are worth. Old Zhao remained silent for a while, then he said softly, you take everything too seriously. Sometimes people are kind to you simply because you deserve kindness. I said nothing else. At 6:30, more students arrived. A line formed in front of the cart. Steam rose from the cooking surface and blurred my vision. I repeated the same movements mechanically. Pour the batter, spread it, crack the egg, add scallions, flip it, brush on sauce, add the crispy cracker, fold it, place it in a bag. I made every jianbing as carefully as possible. I refused to allow my mood to affect the food. At 8:30, the crowd disappeared without thinking. I looked toward the end of the street. The black Maybach did not appear. I stood still for a long time. The bamboo spreader remained suspended in my hand. A drop of batter fell onto the stove before I finally recovered. Of course, Jiyu Qingwan was away on business. Her father had told me the previous day if she was not in the city, the car would not come. But after 1 month, the sudden end of the routine left a strange emptiness inside my chest. I placed down the spreader and began packing. The dried batter needed to be scraped while the cooking surface was hot. The gas cylinder valve needed to be closed tightly. The remaining crackers needed to be sealed so they would not become soft. I had performed those small tasks countless times that morning. My attention kept wandering. Fang Tang, Sister Liu called from 2 stalls away. The girl who buys jianbing every day did not come. She is away on business. I did not look up. Oh, Sister Liu extended the sound and smiled knowingly. You miss her, do you not? Honestly, she is a good person. She has money and power, but she never acts proud around street vendors like us. If she were a man, I would try to arrange a marriage between you, Sister Liu. I laughed despite my irritation. She is the daughter of the GU Corporation. What are you trying to arrange? So what if she is an heiress? Can an heiress not become friends with poor people? Sister Liu continued flipping her flatbread. I think she truly considers you a friend. She came every day for a month, regardless of the weather. Even real sisters do not always show that kind of commitment. I did not answer. Inside, I knew Sister Liu was right. During that month, Jiyu Qingwan had not treated me with charity or curiosity. There was genuine affection in the way she approached me. She waited until I finished serving customers before speaking. When a drunken man bothered me, she immediately stepped forward. On rainy days, she took a longer route to bring me an umbrella. Those small details could not be false, but the more genuine her affection appeared, the more uneasy I became. I did not understand where it came from. Why had she cared about me from the beginning? After returning home that afternoon, I boiled water and prepared one of the herbal teas. The fragrance was delicate. It tasted slightly sweet and warmed my stomach. I sat at the small table with the cup and stared at the jade pendant. My phone suddenly rang. It was an unfamiliar number. After hesitating, I answered, "Hello, Fang Tang. It is me, Jiyu Qingwan." There was a slight delay and faint static from the long-distance call, but her voice remained soft and clear. "I heard you are away on business." "Yes, I am in another city. I will return the day after tomorrow." A smile entered her voice. "You met my father yesterday. He called me and spent a long time praising you." "What did he praise?" "He said you were calm and dignified. He said you had strong principles. He also said you were very—" She stopped herself and laughed softly. "Anyway, he praised everything about you. My father rarely praises people. I could count everyone he has praised on one hand. So, I asked the question with an expectation I could not explain. So, Fang Tang, will you truly not consider joining the GU Corporation?" Her voice became serious. "I am not trying to persuade you for my father. I genuinely believe you should not remain hidden on that street. Your skill deserves to be seen by more people." I remained silent for several seconds. "Qingwan, It was the first time I called her Qingwan instead of Miss Gu or Gu Qingwan. Tell me the truth. Why are you so kind to me? The other end of the call became silent, because, her voice softened until it seemed like a feather resting on water. The first time I ate your jianbing, it felt very familiar. The taste was exactly the same as something from my memories. Fang Tang, have you ever considered that one person may like another without needing a reason? I held the phone and could not speak. All right, I will be back the day after tomorrow. Her voice became cheerful again. I will come to your stall, the usual order, basic jianbing, extra scallions, and a little spice. You must save the freshest crispy cracker for me. I understand. I smiled. My voice was slightly rough after the call ended. I finished the final sip of tea. Night had fallen completely outside. Scattered lights appeared in the narrow streets of the urban village. I could hear someone frying food in a distant kitchen and laughter from a television program. I picked up the jade pendant and turned it over. I studied the neatly carved character again. Tang, the tang from Hai Tang, the Chinese crabapple blossom. When the flowers bloomed, they looked like a pink cloud. My mother said the crabapple tree in our courtyard had produced beautiful flowers during the year I was born. That was why she chose my name at the time. We had not lived in a divided room inside an urban village. We had lived in a small house with a courtyard. A Chinese crabapple tree grew outside. Those memories were so distant that they seemed to belong to a previous life. I held the pendant in my palm. Perhaps I should ask the Gu family for the truth. Not because of the job, not because I wanted a better life. I only wanted to understand why a stranger had crossed this cold city every morning for an entire month to buy my jianbing. I wanted to understand why a powerful man like Jiu Changming had shown such complicated emotion when he first saw my face. There was a story behind this, and that story had to involve me. On the third day, Jiu Qingwan did not come. She still did not come on the fourth. I opened my stall at 5 each morning and closed it at 8:30. The days felt as though they had been printed from the same machine. Steam rose from the cooking surface. Young and noisy students passed. Old Zhao stood beside his stall with an unlit cigarette and continued talking nonsense. But the black Maybach never appeared. Jiu Qingwan had said she would return the day after tomorrow. That day had passed long ago. I found her last message and stared at it for several seconds. I typed a few words and deleted them, then I typed them again and deleted them once more. In the end, I pushed the phone back into my apron pocket. She was the daughter of the GU Corporation. Her schedule was probably arranged by the minute. A delay of several days was normal. What right did a street vendor have to ask where she was? Fang Tang, how many days has it been since that girl came? Old Zhao shouted from his stall. She is busy. I continued scraping the cooking surface. Busy with what? No matter how busy she is, she still needs breakfast. Old Zhao made a doubtful sound. Perhaps her father stopped her from coming. Maybe you said something wrong during your visit and offended them. I said nothing wrong. I threw the bamboo spreader into the bucket more forcefully than necessary. Uncle Zhao, she is a wealthy heiress with her own life. Coming to this street every morning for jianbing was the unusual thing. Is it not normal for her to stop? Old Zhao stared at me, then he laughed and placed the cigarette behind his ear. Yes, completely normal. The only unusual thing is that your voice rose half a level when you said it. I ignored him and rearranged the box of eggs. The eggs were lined up perfectly. A small spot marked the shell of the top one. I stared at it for a long time. Old Zhao was right. I cared. It was not only because the Maybach had stopped appearing. Jiu Qingwan had promised to come after returning. She was already 2 days late and had not sent a single message. That did not seem like her. A woman who had appeared every day for 30 days would not suddenly disappear without saying anything. Had something happened? I forced the thought away. She was a daughter of the Jiu family. If something happened, the entire Jiu Corporation would protect her. A jianbing vendor had no reason to worry. On the 5th morning, the sky was still dark when I pushed my cart toward the street. From a distance, I saw several people near my usual place. When I moved closer, I realized they were not customers. 3 young men in loose sweatshirts and ripped jeans crouched beneath my canopy, smoking. 4 or 5 cigarette ends already covered the ground. The owner is here. A man with dyed yellow hair stood when he saw me. He dropped his cigarette and crushed it beneath his shoe. You are finally here. We have waited for half an hour. I am sorry. I open at 5:30. I stopped the cart and began raising the canopy. Wait a moment. I need to light the stove. Hurry. We are starving. Another man with an earring slapped his stomach. His tone was rough and unpleasant. I connected the gas cylinder and lit the stove. As the cooking surface slowly heated, I examined the 3 men from the corner of my eye. They smelled strongly of cigarettes and alcohol. They did not look as though they had recently awakened. They appeared to have remained awake all night and just left a nightclub. There were 2 nightclubs near the university area still. Their customers rarely came for genbing at this hour. Do all 3 of you want one? Yes, 3, egg and sausage in all of them. The man with yellow hair leaned over the cart and stared directly at my hands with bloodshot eyes. Extra scallions and extra spice. Hurry. His tone made my nerves tighten slightly. I said nothing and worked faster. I had just flipped the first genbing when he spoke again. Owner, I want to ask about someone. Who? Was there a woman who came here every day recently? She drove a black car and had very pale skin. He spoke casually, as though making conversation, but his eyes watched my reaction. Carefully, my hand paused for one moment, then I continued brushing on the sauce. I have many customers. I do not remember. You do not remember. The man with the earring laughed. That car cost several million. Everyone on this street saw it. You expect us to believe you do not remember. The cars my customers drive are none of my concern. I sell genbing, I collect money and make food. I placed the first order in a paper bag and handed it over. Yours is ready, 9 yuan. The man with yellow hair accepted it but did not pay. He weighed it in his hand while smiling in a way that made me uncomfortable. Do you truly not know, or are you pretending? That woman is surnamed GU. She is the daughter of the GU Corporation. She came here every day for a month, and you claim you do not remember. My heart tightened. They were not here for breakfast. They were here because of GU Qingwan. What do you want? I placed down the bamboo spreader and looked directly at them. The yellow-haired man took a bite. He chewed twice, suddenly frowned, and spat the food onto the ground. What is this? It tastes terrible. That GU woman ate this every day. Her taste is certainly strange. The gesture was too deliberate. The sauce and crackers had been prepared that morning. Even if he did not enjoy the flavor, it was not bad enough to spit out. He was not criticizing my food. He was looking for trouble. 3 genbing cost 27 yuan. My voice remained calm. If you do not like them, you do not need to return. 27 yuan. He threw the food onto the ground. It broke apart, scattering egg and crackers. This rubbish is worth 27 yuan. Who are you trying to cheat? The other vendors looked toward us. Old Zhao put down his spatula and moved several steps closer. I am cheating no one. I pointed toward the small board on the cart. Every price was clearly written. What have you wanted since the moment you arrived? What do we want? The 3 men exchanged glances, then the yellow-haired man smiled openly, malice-filled. His face. We only want to remind you that certain people are too high for you to reach. The woman surnamed GU will not return. If you understand your place, continue selling your genbing quietly. Stop dreaming about climbing into a higher world. At last, I understood. They were not local criminals demanding protection money. Someone had sent them to warn me. Someone did not want me connected to the GU family. Someone feared that GU Qingwan might lead me toward information I was not supposed to learn. Who sent you? I looked directly into the yellow-haired man's eyes. No one sent us. We simply dislike people who do not understand their own place. Without warning, he seized the bucket of batter and threw it sideways. The plastic bucket overturned. Thick multigrain batter spread across the ground and splashed over my trousers and shoes. His arm struck the box of crispy crackers. Everything I had fried that morning fell to the ground and shattered. Golden pieces covered the stained concrete. Old Zhao's spatula struck the ground with a metallic sound. He rushed toward me and stood in front of my cart. His face had turned red. What are you doing? What kind of men bully a young woman? I am calling the police. The police? The yellow-haired man tilted his head with complete confidence. Call them. What will they do when they arrive? I will pay for the batter. Is 20 yuan enough? He removed a wrinkled 20 yuan note and threw it. The note floated twice before landing in the batter. The thick liquid slowly soaked through it. My fists tightened, not because of the batter, not because of the crackers, not because of the 20 yuan, because he had said GU Qingwan would not return. That sentence made me angrier than every other insult. It stepped directly on the most sensitive place inside me. But I did not move. 2 years of surviving alone at the bottom of the city had taught me something. If I fought men like these directly, I would be the person who suffered. There were 3 of them and only one of me. Old Zhao was too old to fight. Every vendor on this street depended on a small business and could not afford to offend violent men. Have you finished? I pulled Old Zhao back by the arm, then I looked at the yellow-haired man. My voice was as cold as frost on a winter morning. If you have finished, leave. The batter and crackers are not worth much. I will consider them food for dogs. His face twitched. The final sentence clearly angered him. Who are you calling a dog? He moved closer. His shoulder struck the handle of my cart, making the entire thing shake. The box of eggs slid toward the edge. I reached for it but failed. 7 or 8 eggs rolled to the ground and broke. Yolk and white spread across the concrete. The students nearby stepped backward. Some began recording with their phones, others quickly left because they feared trouble. Old Zhao shook with anger and started dialing the police. At that moment, a hand reached from behind the yellow-haired man and rested firmly on his shoulder. The fingers were long and clearly jointed. A section of white shirt appeared beneath the sleeve. The cufflink was simple silver metal and reflected a cold point of morning light. "Take your hand off the cart." The voice was not loud, but it cut through the noisy street like an icy blade. Everyone froze. So did the yellow-haired man. Jiyu Yangju stood behind him. He wore a long dark grey coat over a white shirt and dark trousers. He was a full head taller than the other man. The pressure created by his presence felt like a mountain descending. The yellow-haired man turned sharply when he saw Jiyu Yangju. His expression changed from arrogance to shock, then from shock to fear. His lips moved. "Jiyu, do you know me?" Jiyu Yangju looked down at him. A faint curve touched his mouth, but his eyes were cold enough to freeze water. "No, I do not know you." The man instinctively stepped backward, escaping Jiyu Yangju's hand. His voice had already weakened. "That is good." Jiyu Yangju removed a dark blue handkerchief from his pocket. He wiped his fingers slowly, then he looked at the destruction on the ground. Broken eggs, spilled batter, shattered crackers, the soaked 20-yuan note. His gaze moved from the ground to the yellow-haired man. His voice was as calm as someone reading meeting minutes. "Batter, crackers, eggs, lost business, and emotional damages. You will pay 2,000 yuan. 2,000. The man with the earring shouted. "Are you robbing us?" Jiyu Yangju did not look at him. His gaze remained on the yellow-haired man. He took one step forward. The movement was small. The other man retreated 2 steps. "You said the person surnamed Jiyu would not return." Jiyu Yangju lowered his head and spoke quietly enough that only those nearby could hear. "The person surnamed Jiyu is here now. Repeat what you said." The yellow-haired man's face became white. He was working for someone, of course. He knew the man before him, Jiyu Yangju, heir to the Jiyu Corporation in this city. Offending Jiyu Yangju could be more dangerous than offending the police. The police might hold you for several days. Jiyu Yangju could make it impossible for you to survive in the city. "Mr. Jiyu," the man's voice trembled. "We were only joking with the owner." "Joking?" Jiyu Yangju tilted his head and looked at the mess on the ground. Then he looked back at the man. The cold smile on his mouth had an edge like a knife. "Fine, I will joke with you too. Kneel down, pick the genbing off the ground, and eat it. Then we will consider the matter finished." The man's pupils contracted violently. His 2 companions no longer dared to speak. The one with the earring lowered his head and moved sideways. The third man quietly placed the genbing in his hand back on the cart. "We will pay." The yellow-haired man's voice became thin and sharp. 2,000. "We will pay." He searched his pockets in panic. Together with the money carried by his companions, they collected slightly more than 1,300 yuan. He held the wrinkled notes out with trembling hands. Jiyu Yangju did not accept them. He turned toward me. Until that moment, his face had been cold and sharp like an unsheathed sword. When he looked at me, something softened briefly inside his dark eyes. It was like a crack forming across winter ice, revealing warm water underneath. "Fang Tang," he said, "you decide." I placed the wet cloth on the stove and looked at the destroyed ingredients. Then I looked at the money in the man's hands. Dozens of people were watching, street vendors, students, passers-by, holding phones. "Put the money there." I pointed to the cart. My voice was quiet but clear. "Return and tell the person behind you something. I, Fang Tang, have no special power. I only sell genbing. But there is a limit to how much anyone can bully another person. If you return, this will not end with money." The man placed the cash on the cart and turned to run. "Wait." Jiyu Yangju spoke without hurry. The man stopped as though someone had nailed his feet to the ground. Jiyu Yangju removed 20 yuan from the pile of money. Then he bent beside the spilled batter, picked up the soaked note, folded it, and held it toward the man. "This is your 20 yuan. You were right. 20 yuan is enough to pay for batter." He released his fingers. The wet note fell onto the man's shoe. "The remaining money belongs to Fang Tang. Her batter is not the same as yours. Your batter is worth 20 yuan. You could never afford hers." The 3 men fled. Their figures disappeared around the corner like wild dogs chased from an alley. The street remained silent for several seconds. Then someone clapped. A wave of approval followed. Old Zhao raised his spatula high in the air. Sister Liu's eyes had turned red. Old Sun gave us a thumbs up from across the street. Jiyu Yangju stepped through the crowd and stopped in front of my cart. He looked down at me. "Are you hurt?" His voice was far gentler than it had been with the men. "No." I shook my head and crouched to clean the ground. Broken eggs were difficult to remove. I needed a scraper. The batter had already entered the cracks in the concrete and could not be wiped away. I kept my head lowered and scraped hard, my hands trembled slightly. It was not fear, it was the natural reaction after the rush of adrenaline ended. Stop scraping, his voice came from above me. I need to clean it, the sanitation inspectors may deduct points this afternoon. He remained silent for 2 seconds, then he crouched beside me. Jiu Yangju, heir to the Jiu Corporation, wearing a coat worth tens of thousands. He crouched on stained concrete and helped me pick up pieces of broken eggshell. You. I looked at him and did not know what to say. I am helping. He spoke only 2 words and continued working. The same long fingers that had frightened the yellow-haired man now carefully picked up a piece of shell and placed it inside the rubbish bag. Old Zhao and Sister Liu wisely returned to their stalls. The crowd gradually dispersed. The street returned to its morning rhythm. Steam rose once more from the cooking plates. It looked as though nothing had happened. But Jiu Yangju and I remained crouched beside the destruction. He picked up eggshells. I scraped the ground. Neither of us spoke. Why did you come? I finally broke the silence. My voice had become calmer. Qingwan asked me to. He threw the final large piece of shell into the bag and brushed the dust from his hands. She could not reach you and became worried. Is your phone turned off? I removed my phone and checked. The battery was empty. I had forgotten to charge it the previous night. She returned from her business trip. She returned last night. The first thing she did after reaching home was ask me to buy Jianbing this morning. He laughed softly. The smile was faint, but it looked unusually real beneath the morning sun. Then I arrived and saw this. Thank you. I tied the full rubbish bag and placed it beside the bin. If you had not appeared, I truly do not know how it would have ended. I did not happen to arrive. Jiu Yangju stood and handed me the blue handkerchief again. I watched from inside the car for 10 minutes. I was already here when you began raising the canopy. I planned to wait until those men left before approaching. I did not expect them to become increasingly violent. I accepted the handkerchief. Instead of wiping my hands, I held it and looked at him. You watched for 10 minutes. Why did you not come immediately? Because I wanted to see how you would respond. His honesty surprised me. You did not panic, cry, or beg. You pulled old Zhao back, which meant you had evaluated the strength of both sides. You asked who sent them, which meant you were analyzing their background. When you said you would consider the food thrown to dogs, it showed that you had limits and would fight back when pushed too far. He did not sound as though he were praising me. He sounded as though he were stating objective facts, but his eyes were gentler than before. The orange flame from the stove reflected inside them. Fang Tang, he said, you are steadier than I expected. Mr. Jiu. I could not stop myself from smiling. You are the heir of a great corporation. Do you not think spending your time observing a Jianbing vendor is a waste? No, he shook his head. Observing someone is never a waste when that person is worth observing. My heart missed one beat, not because of the meaning, because of his tone. It was completely different from our first meeting then. His gaze had been like a cold scanner, questioning everything. Now there was light but certain recognition in his voice. Will you still make Jianbing? Jiu Yangju looked toward the cart. I promised Qingwan I would bring some home. I examined the destroyed ingredients. The main bucket of batter was gone. Most of the eggs had broken. The crackers were scattered. Only half a backup bucket of batter and several eggs remained. There is still enough batter. I tied my apron again, washed my hands, and returned to the stove. Jiu Yangju stood beside me in silence, as he had during his first visit. He watched me pour the batter, he watched me crack the eggs, he watched me flip the crepes and add the sauce, but there was no examination left in his eyes, only quiet attention. 2 with the same order as Qingwan, basic, extra scallions, and a little spice. Yes, he paused. Make another one for me. You want one too? I looked up. I am hungry. He spoke with a completely serious expression, as though announcing an important corporate decision. I lowered my head and laughed, then I poured a 3rd spoonful of batter. The fragrance filled the street. The sauce made a soft sizzling sound against the hot surface. The morning sun had risen completely. Golden light covered the stained back street. It warmed the old canopies, faded signs, and uneven concrete. Jiu Yangju stood beside me holding 2 hot Jianbing. He did not eat. He looked down at them and spoke so softly that his sentence felt like a leaf moving through the wind. Qingwan says your Jianbing tastes like home. My hands stopped. She said that before too. Jiu Yangju continued looking at the food. A thin mist seemed to appear inside his eyes. When she was young, there was an aunt at home who often made a flatbread for her. She said the taste was very similar to yours. After the woman left, Qingwan never tasted it again. My heart tightened sharply. Who was that woman? My throat felt dry. Qingwan never told me much. He shook his head. She only said the woman was the gentlest person she had ever known. Later, something happened, and the woman left the Jiu family. No one heard from her again. He raised his eyes, there was deeper meaning inside his gaze, but his words remained light. It happened a very long time ago. I did not respond. Steam from the cooking surface blurred my vision. I looked down at the pale batter slowly becoming a round crepe, its edges turned golden brown. A long time ago, no news, a gentle woman, the taste of home. The phrases moved around inside my mind like separate pieces. They did not yet form a complete picture, but a string inside me had been pulled violently. Fang Tang, Jiyu Yangju suddenly said my name. Yes, beginning tomorrow, I will arrange additional security patrols on this street. He returned the handkerchief to his coat pocket. His voice became businesslike again. I will discover who sent those men. There is no need to go to so much trouble. It is not trouble, he interrupted me, and his tone became heavier. They were targeting Qingwan. They approached you because they believed you were a weak point. He paused and looked at me deeply. I will not allow anyone to hurt you because you know Qingwan. He spoke slowly, every word sounded carefully considered. Then he lifted the two Jianbing and walked toward the end of the street. His dark grey coat moved in the morning wind. His back was straight like a pine tree. I stood beside the cart and watched him leave. Only after he disappeared did I realize that I still held his blue handkerchief. A small part of it had become damp from the sweat in my palm. Old Zhao appeared beside me with a thermos cup. He drank tea slowly. Fang Tang, yes, that man was the one who came before, the eldest young man from the Jiyu family. Yes, he came to buy Jianbing. Yes, 3, yes. Old Zhao remained silent. Then he sighed deeply and patted my shoulder. Girl, losing that bucket of batter was worth it. He returned to his stall with the thermos. I stood alone in front of my cart, holding the blue handkerchief and wondering whether to laugh or cry. The wind that evening was colder than it had been during the day. By the time I pushed the cart back to my rented building, my fingers had become stiff. 2 of the motion-sensitive lights in the hallway were broken. Only one weak yellow light remained, leaving alternating areas of light and darkness. I locked the cart inside the shed downstairs and walked up. When I inserted my key into the lock, I suddenly stopped. A thin line of light appeared beneath the door. I never forgot to turn off the light before leaving. I had lived there for 2 years. The habit had entered my bones. My first reaction was to step backward. Before I could turn, the door opened from inside. Jiyu Qingwan stood before me. She wore a camel-colored cashmere coat. Her hair fell loosely over her shoulders. When she saw me, her entire expression relaxed. It was the sudden change of someone who had been holding extreme tension and could finally breathe. Her eyes were red. She looked as though she had recently cried. Qingwan, why are you? Before I finished, she pulled me inside. Her hand was cold, but her grip was surprisingly strong. Her knuckles turned white around my wrist. Fang Tang, close the door. Her voice was low and carried tension I had never heard before. I closed and locked the door. Then I turned toward the room. A thin laptop stood open on my table. Several windows covered the screen. Jiyu Qingwan's phone lay beside it. A WeChat conversation was visible. The contact at the top was saved as Secretary Lin. What happened? Jiyu Qingwan did not answer immediately. She stood beside the window, leaning against the wall. Her gaze moved through the dark alley outside as though confirming no one had followed her. After several seconds, she turned to face me. The men who came this morning were sent by my uncle. Her voice was calm, but every word sounded forced through clenched teeth. Your uncle, Jiyu Changsong. Coldness appeared at the corner of her mouth when she said the name. He is my father's older brother and the vice chairman of the Jiyu Corporation. At last week's board meeting, he proposed removing my father as chairman. The proposal failed. He needed an opening that would throw the Jiyu family into conflict. I sat beside the bed and listened. Fang Tang, do you know why he targeted you? Jiyu Qingwan walked to the table and opened a photograph on the laptop. Then she turned the screen toward me. A woman in a simple chipao held a small girl. The child had 2 short pigtails, a round face, and a bright smile. The woman looked down while feeding her something. Her profile was as gentle as the autumn moon. My breathing stopped for one beat. The woman's eyes and brow looked exactly like my mother's when she was young. Who is the little girl? My voice felt dry. That is me. Jiyu Qingwan touched the child on the screen, then she moved her finger toward the woman. That woman. She drew a deep breath. Her eyes turned red again. She is your mother. When? Rulan. I stared at the photograph. My mind became completely blank. It was not the emptiness of simple shock. It felt as though something had expanded inside my throat. I could neither swallow nor release it. My mother knew you. The words left my mouth slowly. My tongue felt heavy. Jiyu Qingwan crouched in front of me and held my hands. Her warm palms covered my cold skin. She looked upward with tears filling her eyes, but her voice remained steady and clear. She did more than know me. Fang Tang, she was the great benefactor of our family. When Jiyu Qingwan was young, My mother had been the Gu family's live-in housekeeper. Her main responsibility was caring for Qingwan at the time. Gu Changming and his wife were building the business and traveled constantly. My mother had almost raised Gu Qingwan by herself from the age of 2 until 7, 5 full years. Your mother treated me better than my own mother. Gu Qingwan's voice finally began trembling. She made jianbing for me, one every morning. Exactly like yours, multigrain batter, crackers she fried herself, sweet bean sauce she cooked herself, extra scallions, fang tang. The first time I ate your jianbing, I almost cried. What happened later? I spoke softly. Later, Gu Qingwan lowered her head and held my old bedsheet tightly. My father offended someone. I do not know exactly who it was. That year, someone sent an anonymous report accusing the Gu family of tax evasion. Tax officials came to investigate. They did not discover any serious problems, but everyone in the house was taken away for questioning. Because your mother was not registered as a local resident, she was detained for allegedly working illegally. She stopped, her nails pressed into her palms. My father used everything he could to release her, but she could no longer remain with the Gu family. After she left, he searched for her for many years. There were no mobile phones then, her address changed, every clue disappeared. He only heard that she remarried and had a daughter. My fingers tightened around the bedsheet, until last month, Gu Qingwan lifted her head, tears finally moved down her cheeks. My secretary happened to see a short local video recommending food stalls. The camera passed your cart and showed your face. I captured the image and sent it to my father. When he saw you, he froze. He said you looked exactly like your mother. Every separate detail suddenly connected. The shock in Gu Changming's eyes when he first saw me had been real. The jade pendant, his statement about fate, Gu Qingwan's 30 days of jianbing. She had not been trying to recruit a product development consultant. She had been confirming whether I was Wen Rulan's daughter. The jade pendant, the words escaped me. It belonged to your mother. Gu Qingwan wiped away her tears and removed her phone from her coat pocket. She found an old photograph and showed it to me. This is what your mother gave me before she left. She called it part of my future wedding gifts. It was a safety pendant with the character Tang carved on the back. Because your childhood nickname was Tang Tang, I kept it in the deepest part of my jewelry box all these years. I never allowed anyone to touch it. When my father said he wanted to return it to you, I thought for an entire night before agreeing. It always belonged to the Fang family. The photograph showed an open blue velvet box. Inside lay the same warm jade pendant Gu Changming had given me, my mother's pendant, the pendant from her wedding gifts. She had given it to the daughter of the Gu family. Then she left with nothing. She moved to a strange place and began again. She washed clothes for people. She completed small handmade jobs. She cooked for construction workers. She accepted every exhausting task. Eventually, she saved enough money to buy a cart. She used our family's jianbing recipe to support me through middle school. I once asked why she named me Fang Tang. She told me crabapple flowers were beautiful and easy to raise. They survived both wind and rain, but she never mentioned the Gu family. She never mentioned the Golden Tower. She never told me she had held a little girl and made jianbing for her every morning. She buried everything inside herself until the day she died. Fang Tang, Gu Qingwan's voice returned me to the room. My uncle discovered your mother's identity. He plans to use it against my father. He wants to claim my father illegally employed your mother and suggest there was something suspicious about the reason she left. Then he will use the rumors to attack my father at the board meeting. I stood immediately. Where is he? Gu Qingwan froze. Who? Your uncle. I grabbed my canvas bag and placed my phone and wallet inside. My movements were fast. I will go to the Gu Corporation tomorrow morning. He wants to attack. Let him. Fang Tang. Gu Qingwan caught my arm. Fear and urgency covered her face. You do not understand my uncle's methods. If he can send men to destroy your stall, he can use much worse methods against you. I slipped out tonight because I wanted to warn you. Do not open your stall for a while. Hide until my father resolves the board situation. Hide. I looked at her and laughed once. Qingwan, my mother hid for her entire life. She hid until she died and never told me what happened to her. Do you believe her daughter should continue hiding? Gu Qingwan's hand became still. I do not want trouble. I gently removed her hand and held it in mine. My voice softened. But they have attacked my mother. I cannot hide from that. What time is the board meeting tomorrow? 9. Her voice was hoarse. Good. I nodded and released her hand. Then I walked to the window and looked outside. It was a late autumn night. Only a few dim streetlights illuminated the urban village. Several distant figures moved near the entrance to the alley and disappeared. I closed the curtains and faced Gu Qingwan. You will stay here tonight. We will go together tomorrow morning. She sat on my bed, the hem of her camel-colored cashmere coat rested on my faded floral bedsheet. Her tears had not dried, but she smiled. All right. At 8 the following morning, I put on the cotton dress that had remained in storage. My mother had sewn it for me. The fabric was blue with small flowers. The style was old, but every stitch was neat. I tied my hair and hung the jade pendant around my neck. The mirror showed a face without makeup, but my mother's shadow remained in my eyes and brows. Jiyu Qingwan watched from the doorway. Her gaze stopped briefly on the pendant. Then she approached and adjusted the collar of my dress. Let us go. Jiyu Yanzhou's car waited at the entrance to the alley. The dark grey body reflected the cold morning light. He leaned against the door in a formal black suit. A dark blue tie rested at his collar. When Jiyu Qingwan and I left the building, his gaze paused on me. You have decided? Yes. He nodded and opened the car door for us. After the car started, he looked at me through the rearview mirror. No matter what happens at the board meeting today, I will stand beside you. I sat in the back seat. The safety belt pressed the cold jade pendant against my skin through the cotton dress. Thank you. The large conference room on the 68th floor was already full when I arrived. Almost 20 directors and shareholders sat on both sides of a long table. There were men and women. The youngest appeared to be in their 30s. The oldest had completely white hair. Jiyu Changming sat at the chairman's position at one end, an untouched cup of tea stood before him. His face looked calm, but there were faint dark circles beneath his eyes. When he saw me enter, surprise flashed through his eyes. Then he stood and gave me a slight nod. The movement was small and controlled. To an outsider, it looked like an ordinary chairman greeting a guest. I understood the complicated light inside his eyes. At the other end of the room, a man in a dark brown suit stood. He appeared several years older than Jiyu Changming. His hair was thin, deep lines covered his face, but his eyes shone sharply, like an old cat that had waited in darkness for a long time. A smile rested on his mouth. It contained no genuine warmth and made me uncomfortable. Jiyu Changsong, vice chairman of the Jiyu Corporation, Jiyu Changming's older brother. Well, who is this young woman? Jiyu Changsong's voice sounded deliberately light. Did she enter the wrong floor? His gaze passed over my cotton dress and canvas bag. His smile deepened. Vice Chairman Jiyu Changming said steadily. This is Fang Tang. She is a special guest observing today's meeting. Fang Tang. Jiyu Changsong raised an eyebrow and pretended to think. The name sounds familiar. Is she not the woman who sells jianbing behind the university? I heard you privately met her recently. Changming, are you formally introducing her to everyone today? The directors began whispering. Several looked at me differently. There was curiosity, judgment, and contempt. Jiyu Qingwan touched the back of my hand beneath the table. Jiyu Yangju stood beside the side door with both hands in his pockets. His cold gaze remained fixed on Jiyu Changsong. Vice Chairman Jiyu, I spoke. My voice was not loud, but everyone in the room heard it. I am Wen Rulan's daughter. The whispering stopped instantly. Wen Rulan. I repeated the name and calmly looked across every face. She worked as a live-in housekeeper for the Jiyu family 18 years ago. She was my mother. Someone drew a sharp breath. Several older directors showed complicated expressions. They clearly remembered the name. They also remembered the events from that year. At the time, as expected, Jiyu Changsong seized control of the conversation. His voice grew louder. Chairman Jiyu employed a housekeeper who did not possess local registration, that violated the employment regulations for migrant workers at the time. During the tax investigation, this housekeeper was detained because of her status. The incident caused serious reputational damage to the Jiyu Corporation. Several senior directors here should remember that. He looked toward the older directors. One gave a slight nod. And today, Jiyu Changsong turned toward me with a confident smile. The housekeeper's daughter has appeared here. As far as I know, she has become very close to the Jiyu family. Changming, have you been contacting her because you want to compensate for the past? I understand your guilt, but you must consider whether satisfying that guilt is worth risking the reputation of the entire Jiyu Corporation. His argument had been carefully prepared. First, he defined my mother's employment as a stain on Jiyu Changming. Then he presented Jiyu Changming's kindness toward me as guilt. Finally, he accused him of using company resources to repay a personal debt. Every step connected perfectly. Jiyu Changming's fingers moved once around the lid of his teacup. Before he could speak, I spoke first. Vice Chairman Jiyu. My voice remained quiet, but each word was firm. You claim Chairman Jiyu violated regulations when he employed my mother. Do you have evidence proving she worked illegally? Jiyu Changsong froze. She was detained. That is a fact. Being detained does not mean she worked illegally. I interrupted him and moved 2 steps toward the table. I stood where everyone could see my face. During her employment with the GU family, my mother, when Rulan possessed a legal temporary residence permit and work permit, she was detained because someone anonymously accused her of tax evasion. The investigation later proved the accusation false. She did not evade taxes. Every cent she earned was clean. I removed a brown paper envelope from my canvas bag. I opened it, took out several documents, and placed them on the table. This is the original notice closing the tax investigation. I moved the yellowed document forward. It clearly states that the investigation found no tax violations by Wen Rulan and that no punishment would be imposed. The directors exchanged glances. A middle-aged man wearing glasses picked up the notice and examined both sides, then he nodded. "This document is genuine," I said. "My mother protected it for 18 years. We moved countless times. She lost countless possessions, but she kept these papers. She knew her innocence was the only dignity she had left from her time with the GU family." "So what?" Gu Changsong laughed coldly, but the confidence in his voice had weakened. "Even if she did not evade taxes, that does not change the fact that Changming made a poor employment decision and created trouble for the company." "A poor decision?" I turned toward him and smiled slightly. "Vice Chairman Gu, employing my mother was one of the best decisions Chairman Gu ever made." I removed the second document. These are medical records belonging to the Gu children at the time. When Gu Qingwan was 4, she developed acute pneumonia and a fever of 40 degrees Celsius. Chairman Gu and his wife were both away on business. There was only a cook and a temporary driver at the house. My mother carried Gu Qingwan through the snow for 2 kilometers to the nearest hospital. The doctor said another 20 minutes would have killed the child. I placed a copy of the medical report on the table and opened it to the emergency visit record. The date and doctor's signature were clearly visible. Gu Qingwan's eyes had already turned red. She pressed her lips tightly together to keep herself from crying. Gu Changsong's smile froze. "There is more." I removed the third set of documents. These are materials related to tax evasion by a GU corporation subsidiary 7 years ago. Chairman GU had already noticed a problem but lacked direct evidence. While organizing the GU family study, my mother accidentally found copies of original financial records that the subsidiary's financial manager intended to destroy. She gave them to Chairman GU. I placed the yellowed records on the table and looked at Gu Changsong. "Vice Chairman Gu, you claimed my mother damaged the GU corporation. Then answer me." She helped Chairman Gu report the subsidiary and pay the missing taxes before the authorities imposed penalties worth hundreds of millions. Was that a loss or a benefit? She pulled Gu Qingwan back from death. Was that a loss or a benefit? The room became silent. It remained silent for a long time. The directors who had whispered earlier now sat without moving. Several older directors displayed open shock. They remembered the incidents but had never known these details. Only the people directly involved had known. Now the daughter of the housekeeper whose name had been stained stood before them with evidence for every sentence. Gu Changsong's lips moved. His smile had completely vanished. He opened and closed his mouth like a fish thrown onto land. "Changsong." Gu Changming finally spoke. His voice was low and calm, as though he had expected everything. "Do you have anything else to say?" Gu Changsong's face became red, then it turned dark. His hands pressed against the edge of the table until his knuckles whitened. "Even if," he gritted his teeth, his voice became sharp, "even if all of this is true, it does not change the fact that you contacted Wen Rulan's daughter privately. You brought a Jianbing vendor to a board meeting. What are you trying to do? Do you want everyone to know you feel guilty? Do you want the GU corporation to carry a personal debt?" Before I could answer, someone stepped beside me. Gu Yangju had left the side door without my noticing. He placed a document on the conference table and pushed it toward the center. "What is that?" Gu Changsong stared at him cautiously. "Bank transfer records and overseas account statements." Gu Yenzhou's voice was as calm as someone reading a weather report. "During the past 3 years, you used 4 offshore companies to transfer illegal payments to 3 core suppliers of the GU Corporation. There were 17 transfers totaling 27 million yuan. The funds eventually entered your personal account in Singapore." The room exploded. Several directors stood immediately. One removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Another seized the documents and examined every page. Their expressions moved from shock to anger, then from anger to pale disbelief. All color disappeared from Gu Changsong's face. Nothing remained except grayness. He stepped backward and struck the arm of a chair. He nearly collapsed into it. "Where did you get that?" "The clue came from the Jianbing vendor you tried to frame." Gu Yangju looked at him coldly. "You should not have sent men to destroy her stall. Those 3 men were not careful with their words." The security department spoke with them for half an hour last night. They confessed everything. His voice became even lighter. They described how you ordered them to investigate Fang Tang. They admitted you told people to photograph her meetings with my sister. They explained that you planned to turn the material into an online scandal. Uncle, you used every possible method to destroy my father. Then you assumed a Zhenbing vendor would be easy to crush. You selected the wrong person. Jiyu Changsong's mouth remained open, no words came out. Director Zhong, Jiyu Yangju called toward the door. The head of security entered with 4 uniformed guards. Jiyu Changsong is suspected of embezzlement and commercial bribery. The evidence is clear. Ask him to cooperate with the company investigation and notify the economic crime authorities. After speaking, Jiyu Yangju returned to the side door and leaned against the wall. 2 guards held Jiyu Changsong by the arms. His body seemed to lose every bone. They carried him from the room. He continued muttering, but no one understood the words. Silence returned. It lasted a long time. Jiyu Changming stood from the chairman's seat. He approached and looked down at me. This billionaire businessman had made ruthless decisions for decades. Now his eyes were red, and his lips trembled slightly. You look so much like your mother. His voice was very soft, as though he feared breaking something fragile. All these years, Fang Tang, you have suffered. I looked into his eyes, then I smiled. It was the relieved smile of someone who had finally removed a weight pressing on her chest for years. I did not suffer, I said. My mother told me crabapple flowers are easy to raise. They survive wind and rain. The Jiyu family owes your mother. Jiyu Changming held my hand. His palm was warm and steady. We have owed her for 18 years. She is gone. We can only repay the debt through you. There is no need to repay me. I shook my head and pulled the jade pendant from beneath my dress. It reflected a gentle light. Qingwan said this pendant was part of my mother's wedding gifts. She gave it to Qingwan as a future wedding gift. That meant she was entrusting my younger sister to your family. My mother trusted you. Why should I not? A soft sob came from behind me. Jiyu Qingwan's tears finally broke free. She stood and wrapped both arms around me from behind. Her camel cashmere coat surrounded my blue cotton dress. 2 young women held each other tightly in the center of a conference room filled with directors and shareholders. Jiyu Changming turned toward the windows and wiped his eyes. Jiyu Yangju remained beside the door, watching from a distance. His expression was still quiet, like deep water without waves, but the corner of his mouth lifted. The smile was faint, but more genuine than any I had seen from him. The board meeting ended 1 hour later. The economic crime authorities took Jiyu Changsong away for investigation. The board unanimously approved his removal as vice chairman. As a special observing guest, I sat in an extra chair at the end of the table and personally abstained from the vote. I possessed no voting rights in the Jiyu Corporation, but Jiyu Changming insisted that I remain seated. When I left the conference room, sunlight poured through the large window at the end of the corridor. It formed a golden river across the carpet. Jiyu Yangju waited outside. I will drive you home. He held his car keys. There is no need. I can, it is on my way. He interrupted me. His expression remained calm, but his tone carried a familiar certainty. Jiyu Qingwan hurried from behind and patted my shoulder. Then she winked at her brother. Brother, take Fang Tang home. I need to handle the procedures concerning uncle. I will see you at dinner. She walked away quickly. Her heels struck the marble in a bright rhythm. There were only 2 people inside the elevator. The small space felt like a sealed box. A faint cedar fragrance came from Jiyu Yangju. Your Zhenbing is very good, he said without warning. You already said that today. I laughed. I am saying it again. He looked toward the changing floor numbers. The light emphasized the sharp line of his profile. May I buy one every morning from now on? My heart missed a beat. Mr. Jiyu. Eating street food every morning may not be appropriate for someone in your position. What is inappropriate? He finally turned toward me. There was an intensity in his deep eyes that made it difficult to hold his gaze. If I believe it is appropriate, then it is. The elevator reached the first floor. The doors opened onto the shining marble lobby and the golden crystal chandelier above the reception desk. Jiyu Yangju stepped out first, then he turned toward me. Fang Tang, stop hiding. What? I said. Stop hiding. He stood in the 10 o'clock sunlight with both hands inside his pockets. Warm gold outlined his entire figure. I know you are accustomed to carrying everything yourself, but there are some things you do not need to carry alone. I stood at the elevator entrance. Sunlight entered through the windows and illuminated the jade pendant on my chest. Jiyu Yangju. It was the first time I used his full name, not Mr. Jiyu, not the Jiyu heir. Yes, thank you. He tilted his head slightly. The small curve at the corner of his mouth finally opened into a real smile. You are welcome, Zhenbing lady. What happened later was called a legend by some people and a joke by others. To me, it was simply my life. After Jiyu Changsong was transferred to the judicial authorities, the 7 or 8 people he had placed inside the Jiyu Corporation were removed. Control of the corporation returned firmly to Jiyu Changming. At the final board meeting of the year, the directors unanimously approved a new proposal. The Rulan Foundation would be established in the name of Wen Rulan. It would support low-income women working hard to survive in the city. The first 10 million yuan of funding came from Jiyu Changming. Personally, I became the chairwoman of the foundation. Many members of the media attended the opening ceremony. One reporter asked, "Miss Fang, what is the greatest lesson you learned while moving from a Jianbing stall to this position?" I thought for a moment, then I said, "Never look down on anyone selling food beside the road. You never know how many stories are folded inside the Jianbing in her hand." The reporters laughed and called me the most practical foundation chairwoman of the year. Jiyu Qingwan attended that day. She stood among the crowd and gave me a thumbs up. Jiyu Yangju stood beside her. He held a bouquet of Chinese crabapple blossoms. The pink petals were as bright as a cloud beneath the sunlight. He walked toward me and placed the flowers in my hands. "For you, why crabapple blossoms? Because your name is Fang Tang." He paused. "And because they truly are beautiful." Jiyu Qingwan covered her mouth and laughed. Then she moved closer and whispered in my ear. "My brother searched through half the city to find a flower shop that could prepare that bouquet. Do you think crabapple blossoms are easy to find during this season?" I lowered my head and buried my face among the petals. The fragrance was sweet and fresh, like a spring breeze. "Thank you." My voice was muffled by the flowers. "You are welcome." Jiyu Yanzhou's voice came from above me. It was as calm as ever, but the final sound lifted slightly, revealing a quiet happiness that could only be noticed by someone listening carefully. The sky was blue, the wind was gentle. Everything was exactly right.